Every 40 seconds, someone in the US has a stroke. Every 3.5 minutes, someone dies from a stroke. And Black people have the highest rate of deaths due to stroke. Now, May is National Stroke Awareness Month. And our next guest is sharing a very personal story of caring for her mother after a series of strokes. Joining us now is the author of In Stroke's Shadow, My Caregiver Story, Kyle Ruffin. Thank you so much for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
Share with us, if you will, what made you decide to write this book? Why did you need to get this story on paper?
Well, when my mother had her stroke, I went looking for a book that could tell me what I might expect as her caregiver, and I couldn't find it. The books I found really focused on the patient. And I felt like I needed something to help me understand what to expect. And after her stroke, several of her friends, people in our family circle, were having strokes, and their caregivers would come to me asking me how I dealt with a variety of situations. And as someone who enjoys writing, this was an opportunity for me to put something out there that would help not just them, but more people who are in this situation.
How did being in this position and needing to care for your mother, that absolutely changed your life? What do you think the greatest change was?
Well, the greatest change for me was having to look at everything during that period through the lens of caring for her. So I am childless. I'm married, but I don't have any children. So I didn't have any experience having to focus more of my energy and attention on someone else. So that was a pretty dramatic change for me, and it happened overnight.
Yeah.
But I felt like my mother had been grooming me for that my entire life. So I kind of went right into action because I kind of knew what was expected of me, what she expected of me.
You know, sometimes we talk about things and we say, you know, it was a blessing or it was a curse. Did this turn out to be more of a blessing than you expected?
That is a really great question, because in the beginning, I would have never expected that to be the case. But in the end, I had a relationship with my mother that I had never had before. We were closer than we had been my entire life. I have had a lot of regrets about when my father died suddenly of congestive heart failure in 1995. My sister died of lung cancer in 2002. So I had a lot of regrets about how I handled myself in those situations. There were things, you know, you wish you had said that you never said, things that you maybe thought you pushed too hard on that might have resulted in an outcome that you didn't want. And with my mother, I had a chance to make up for that. And to make sure I said the things I wanted to say, that I kind of ended up doing the things that I wish I had done for my dad and my sister. So it was kind of a gift, and not just because it brought us closer together, but I learned a lot about myself and a lot about my relationship with my mother
during that period. And your mother had 3 strokes, and they were different strokes. Are there things that you learned about strokes and the signs, knowing what to look out for, that you are happy that you're able to share with the readers of this book?
Well, yes. I mean, before her first major stroke, and I didn't know this at the time, but she had passed out. And she was with her girlfriends, and because she was always so healthy and on top of things, they didn't think to tell me, and she didn't tell me. And shortly before that, I went to her house I just popped by one afternoon, and it was 1 o'clock in the afternoon, and she was in bed, and she said she felt dizzy and that she wanted to just lay down. And again, I didn't push because it didn't seem that serious, but in hindsight, those were mini strokes. And, it's important for people to take those seriously because those are warning signs. And had I known that at the time, I think I would have been a little more aggressive about getting her to take care of herself.
Yeah, I think you probably would have been a lot more aggressive. But sometimes you don't really know until you know. One of the things you've said is that this is not a book about strokes. It's not a medical guide. But it is, you feel, important information that you have to share with other people about caregiving, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, caregiving is not something that's done in isolation. The relationships that you bring to the caregiving experience. So my mother and I, our relationship, I write in the book about how when my mother and I were in the room, it was never just her and I. It was her mother, her grandmother, it was all the people in her life and all the people in my life who were in that room working our way through a situation. And sometimes that turned out good, sometimes it didn't. So there's so much that has to be taken into consideration when you're caring for another person. It's pretty complex. For me, I had to manage all her personal business. I went from not knowing anything about the status of her mortgage to her bank account to her medical coverage. I had no idea about any of that. And I had to take on all of that. And I also had to sell my family home. Our family had lived in that house for 41 years at that point. So it became my sole responsibility to empty out a house full of 41 years of memories and take on the responsibility of selling that house while still taking care of her and still trying to have a life.
Yeah.
So yes.
It's a lot. What do you want? I'm going to ask you one question first. Who took care of you? Or did you just put off getting taken care of while you were focused on taking care of your mother?
I took care of myself. I'm a big believer in self-care. I've done a lot of work around, I'm a certified yoga instructor, so I can appreciate that. I saw a therapist, which was tremendously helpful because it helped me deconstruct that relationship between my mother and I. And it allowed me to see her with compassion as opposed to anger. I continued my workout routines. So I made sure that at 6 o'clock in the morning, I would go to the gym and make sure that I was getting my workout. And I met my buddy there, and she and I sometimes she would get an earful. I really did take it into my own hands to make sure I was taking care of myself.
Which is the very healthy choice. What are you hoping that readers get from your book?
I'm hoping they get the message that they're not alone. I think a lot of caregivers suffer in silence, and there's a growing caregiver community out there that allows people to be their honest selves. I think that I see it in people's faces when I describe what the book is about, and they kind of step back and they go, oh, like, am I allowed to talk about that? Am I allowed to have these feelings? Am I allowed to not necessarily be grateful that I still have my mother or father or grandparent? So I want people to understand that this is something that is real. It's not just them. And that they can have permission to deal with their own emotional and mental health needs.
And that there's other people are going through the same thing. I guess don't be afraid to ask questions. Reach out and say, I'm tired, or I'm feeling angry, or whatever the feelings may be.
Absolutely.
So the book is In Stroke's Shadow, My Caregiver Story. And where can we find this book, Kyle?
You can find the book on Amazon or through barnesandnoble.com.
Okay.
There are other places that you can purchase the book online that are on my website, and my website is mycaregiverstory.com.
All right. Kyle Ruffin, thank you so much for talking with us this afternoon and sharing your story. And when we come back, we are actually going to talk with some medical experts about the issues of stroke in the African American community. So you are helping us to jumpstart a conversation that we all need to have. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Sandra Bookman, and Here and Now. We'll be right back.